the people who need to hear about the living God, what he's really like. During World War II, there was this one particular platoon that was fighting together, and as often happens when you fight alongside each other, there was one group within that platoon that became particularly close. And there's one particular firefight that happened as they were fighting in France. And during this fight, one of their friends was killed. And so after the fight, the remaining friends came, they found his body, and they were looking for a place to give him a fitting burial. And so they found this church in the French countryside, and when they found it, they saw there was this fence around a cemetery, and they thought, that's the perfect place. That's so fitting for him. And so they went to there, they saw there was room inside, walked up the door, knocked on the door, and there was a priest. And they explained the situation. Our friend has died, and we want to find a fitting place to bury him. Can we bury him in your cemetery? We're about to move out. And the priest said, I'm sorry, but the cemetery is for members of our church. And sensing their disappointment, he said, well, maybe you can bury him just outside the cemetery. We can do that. And they were too exhausted. They were too spent to argue. And so they spent that evening digging a hole and burying their friend. They said some words, and then they went back to their camp. And later on that night, they found out that they were heading out the next morning. And so what they decided, because they weren't sure when they were going to be there again, they decided to go visit their friend and pay their last respects one more time. And so they went back out to that church, and they thought they had found the right church, but as they walked around, there was no gravesite. They couldn't find the gravesite, and they were just really confused. They knew they were tired. They knew it was late, but they thought this was the right place. And so they went up, they knocked on the door, and it was the same priest, and it was the same church. And they said to him, can you help us? We can't find the grave. And the priest said, well, I felt really bad about what I said last night, and so after you left, I went out and I moved the fence. Friends, God is not asking us to make decisions for people. God is asking us to give them the opportunity so he can move the fence. To give them all the opportunities so they can know Jesus, who Jesus is, like you do, and not the TV image, not the image of their childhood, not the image of a negative relationship, but from you. Because, friends, salvation hangs in the balance. It does. And we don't want to be like this story where we realize too late, or we take it to heart too late. And that's why Jesus told this, not to depress us, because the joy here is we still have an opportunity to introduce people we know, people we love, to Christ, because salvation hangs in the balance. And we're all going to live forever, somewhere. The question is, can our friends have that opportunity to choose?